Hey Adam, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
How was your day?
Yeah, it's good. It's nice weather here in Western Canada. A little bit of smoke here and there, but other than that, can't complain.
Yeah, I remember it was bad last time when we came in May last year.
The forest fires were last summer were really bad, and this summer was a bit cooler to start, so there wasn't as much smoke. So it was, people have been able to enjoy the outdoors a little more this summer.
Cool.
Yeah.
Why don't you start telling the viewers about a bit about yourself and what led you to become a CTO?
Sure, yeah. So I'm born and raised in Calgary in Canada. I am a computer science background, loved computers since I was very little, knew exactly, unlike a lot of people who finish high school and are unsure what to do next, I knew exactly what was coming next. It was computer science, did that, and got my degree, and then went out into the software development world for a few years. And learned a lot about software development and building teams. And then after some time working in Canada, my wife and I decided to move to the UK. So we moved to London, where I got pretty involved there in the tech startup scene. That was back in 2013, 2014. And at that time, it was really starting to become a hot place in London with the tech scene there, the Silicon Roundabout as they started to call it. So there I ended up joining a small tech startup. I worked for some bigger companies. I worked for AOL, which I didn't really realize at the time was one of the largest, I think top 3 largest ad publishers online at the time through advertising.com. So even though most people know them for their email and internet connection, they actually had a significant presence on the internet through a lot of ad properties, like they own Huffington Post and TechCrunch and Gadget, a whole bunch of these fairly significant properties on the internet. So it was a pretty special opportunity to work with them. And then after working with them, I went for a very, very small startup and eventually started to take over the team there and run the development team. And I naturally found myself moving away from being hardcore raw coding and into a little bit more of a leadership role. And I think that was just my personality, I guess. I just did well with that type of environment, and a lot of people who like to write code just like to do that, and that's fine. And some kind of gravitate a little more towards leadership and working with people as much as they work with computers. So, and then flash forward to today, I'm back in Canada now, no longer in London, and I have a startup of my own in a smart building IoT space. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Cool. And being a CTO of 2 different companies, what does your typical day look like? How do you split your time between the 2?
It's a little bit tough. I mean, being fractional, I think, is not really necessarily a great long-term thing for companies, but I try really hard to keep my hands out of the code. I think that's one thing that you really have to do if you're going to be successful in that. And even if you're working just for one company, at this point in time, my responsibility to one of the companies is quite small. I'm only there working with about 1 day a week, and the rest of the time is on the smart building and IoT company. And so, I have a little more time there where I can get more technical. But I think really, if you want to deliver at the role properly, you have to be careful and how much you get yourself entrenched with writing computer code, because as you know, Sanket, it just sucks you in. You start spending time doing it, and then you're fixing a problem, then you find another problem, then you find something else, and you got to figure this out, and then before you know it, 3 days have elapsed, and your inbox is at 400 emails, and people are wondering why you're not answering. So it's a balance for sure.
Cool. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you encounter in your role, and how do you overcome them?
I think hiring is very difficult. I mean, it's not just the CTO role, I think, but also in general, it's challenging. But you can find people often who are, when you're trying to grow a development team, you can find people who are very technically proficient who interview very well. And it's really, really hard when you're in, especially when you're in environments where you have limited resources, maybe limited time to do deep vetting. Where, in a large organization, sometimes you might have these individuals meet bigger team members and spend a lot more time. Sometimes you have to move quickly, make decisions quickly, so you have to take some risks. And I've experienced times before where it's been challenging on the hiring side. When you land at the right person, then it makes a big difference. But that's one thing for sure. And then, depending on the kind of startup that you're in, may not be a startup, you may be a CTO for a really big company, resource management and how much you're able to actually execute and deliver as a team can be a challenge. Again, if you're working for a big company that has nice, thick budgets, then that might not be so much of an issue, but my kind of experience is more in the small startup world, so that's definitely a challenge to manage. And, we've tried to tackle that one in a few different ways. Some startups are successful in bringing in more junior resources, more cost-effective resources, and there's obviously the burden of often having to spend time training individuals like that, but if you find the right people, you can really have effective output. And then, increasingly less successful, I think now would be some of the offshoring models where you employ people in remote environments where wages are lower. That's become harder and harder as well in the last few years. I would say there's becoming a bit of a leveling in the market, especially places like Eastern Europe, where you used to, hire a developer $15 an hour. Now they're almost up to market rate with basically the rest of the world. And I know other places that have been popular, like India as well. They're not quite at that level, but the rates have come up significantly. So the leveling of the market has made that opportunity not so much there. Which is obviously wonderful for the people living in those countries. But when you're in a limited resource environment, that was one tool that's been at the disposal of people. It's not really so much anymore. So those are a couple of the big challenges, I would say. And then obviously, depending on the size of the company you're working with, some of the hardest parts are managing expectations with the business teams, the sales side of the companies, right? They have customers, maybe they promise things that they want to have to deliver, and you, being a head of technology, are kind of tasked with the responsibility of making sure that you are executing, delivering, but also setting expectations on, it's going to take us some time to build X, and so those types of relationships are often challenging to manage. And I've been in environments where it's been fantastic and there's been a really great cohesion between the technical and non-technical sides of the business, and I've been in other environments where things have been promised and expectations for development teams to deliver things has been a little bit too high. So I don't know, those are a few thoughts on things that I've experienced.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with those two challenges, because I've currently faced those two challenges in my current role as well. Hiring is definitely challenging because people get offers so quickly, so you need to make sure your hiring process is not too long, not too short, and you have enough rounds so you can judge their skills. And again, the technical and the non-technical side of the business I think is a common challenge that all the technology leaders face in any business, unless you are technology first, like Facebook or Google, where everyone understands technology. You're always going to have that differences between the stakeholders, where they expect everything now, or they wanted everything yesterday, but they don't understand how much effort it goes from the developers and the designers and everyone to be able to create an application or any sort of piece of tech.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So what are some interesting projects that you and your team are currently working on, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. I can get into the weeds a little bit on that one. So the smart building company IoT business that I'm one of the co-founders of, we're based in Western Canada, and we deploy LoRaWAN networks. So for people who are little more technical, they would know the LoRaWAN networks are kind of long range, low power networks designed for IoT devices. They don't do, it's low bandwidth, and that's the trade-off for the low battery, and the long range is you can't do things like video and audio images. It's all just small messages. So we go into commercial buildings, industrial buildings, multifamily housing, and we outfit them with a whole array of different types of sensors. So things like water leak detection, temperature monitoring, indoor air quality monitoring, which is a whole array of metrics, and an increasingly hot topic and globally with COVID, and also here in Western Canada with the forest fires being such a big issue. We do power metering, so that's kind of in around the ESG space of gathering real-time power data from buildings. So really, there's a whole gamut of items that we work in, and we're trying to, grow this business. And for me, as a founder, as a technical founder, my time is split between trying to develop the product, build the product, support the product, but also go out and sell it, because they, one of the things about being in a startup is that it's typically a lot easier for a founder to be the lead on sales than it is to hire outside sales. They're just really hard for them to grasp the value proposition and move it forward in such a way that the founders can do. So that's been challenging, but we've had some good growth and good traction in the market in the last couple of years. We've got some fairly sizable portfolios under management now, large buildings, and we have occupancy charts and showing how buildings are being used, and trying to help them reduce their risk on insurance by catching issues with anomalous temperature, water leaks, issues with security around ingress and egress, a whole bunch of different things. So it's a really exciting time for our company, and we're expanding now into other parts of Canada, potentially into the US later, end of the year, into next year. So a lot of opportunity out there. This is I think it's a competitive, it's an emerging space as well, and a lot of especially commercial and industrial property managers and owners are really are feeling the pressure right now to improve their ESG. They all have these net zero targets, and a lot of them have no idea what their benchmark is. So how much electricity does my building use? What's the carbon footprint of my building? How much water am I using? How much gas am I using? And so in order for them to make steps forward, they have to obviously understand the benchmarks of where they are, but also look for opportunities where they can reduce uses of resources to make their buildings more efficient. And technology is by far the best way to do that. So that's what we're working in support of. So I think we're hitting the market at the right time. But it's like with any startup, there's a lot of challenges, and you got to work real hard. So that's my story today. Definitely.
I definitely like the startup mentality of getting things done. Get things done quickly, otherwise someone else will. I think that's a really interesting product. Are you just planning to cover Canada and US, or are you planning to go global in future?
I think we have potentially some long-term aspirations to look into the European market. The use of LoRaWAN networks is actually quite a bit more prominent outside of North America. As I understand, North America is probably one of the slowest adopters of the technology. Places like New Zealand, Australia, and Europe, there's quite a bit more adoption of that technology. So I would say the competitive landscape is a little more challenging, but not to say that we don't have a great product service that we can compete in the market with. Definitely would be looking for opportunities, not in 2024, probably in the years ahead, to sell our product overseas.
Sounds good. We wish you all the best. We hope that you expand soon.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Keep working.
And to develop this product, what kind of technologies are you using, and why did you choose them?
LoRaWAN is the kind of foundational, as I mentioned already, and we picked that one over other solutions, like for example Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, obviously has super high throughput. You can send a lot of data over Wi-Fi, but power consumption is massive. So if you have Wi-Fi sensors in your house, you'd be aware that those things will chew through battery real quick, especially if you're reporting at high intervals. And the range of Wi-Fi is not as good either. So that is one of the reasons. And then, you can also do cellular backhaul, so you can communicate the IoT devices through SIM cards and cell networks, but that tends to be quite expensive. If you've got a building with 200 SIM cards and 200 devices, you've got to start to make some serious big carrier agreements to get all that. So the LoRaWAN is a nice solution in that it uses these gateways, which are almost like think of them as kind of like a Wi-Fi router. You put a few of those at a property, and then all the little edge devices will gather the data and report the data to the gateways, and then we backhaul the data off those back to the cloud. So that was kind of our approach and model, and the trade-offs we considered of why one solution may be better than another. In terms of software, we're using a whole bunch of different pieces of software. I think we have code that's written in Go, Node.js, Ruby, JavaScript, React, all kinds of stuff. I think we got some Python in there. So each piece of the tech stack is using a different piece of code, or a different type of technology, really kind of depending on what we're doing in that particular part. There's a data feed that obviously pulls all the data off all the devices, and then we have to process that, and then we push that into data stores, and then we present that to the users in different ways. So yeah, we've kind of picked a few different technologies to tackle that problem.
And how do you manage the skill sets within the team when you're using so many different languages? Do you have quite a big team, or?
No, the team's pretty small, I think, but I think, a lot of the stuff, especially with web development, is very heavy in JavaScript. So the one thing that I really look for when we bring people on is their experience to do work in JavaScript. So whether you're working with a backend Node.js service, or you're doing, almost every single web-based user-facing product, even if it is being hosted on a Python backend or a .NET backend or a Ruby backend or whatever, there's going to be a massive lift on the front side with browser, regardless of what framework you're using. So whether you're using Vue or you're using React, what are you using? But the foundation of all that is really JavaScript is very critical. So for me, that's definitely one of the big things that we look for. And I do find, in terms of being able to pivot into other languages, if you have experience with Python, which definitely most new university students do, it's very hard to find someone who hasn't at least touched it once in their career. So that we find to be pretty transferable, and use that within our Ruby stack and other pieces of code. So, it's obviously nice to have people that have exactly the skill set and background that you want, but the reality of it is, you're better off, I think, just having people that are part of your team that have the ability to learn, fast learners, that have some good foundational knowledge.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. When I sort of hire developers for my team, I always look for people who can pick up things quickly. So although sometimes we're hiring for React, for example, we sort of give them some. In the test, we sort of give them other pieces of technology as well to see how quickly they pick things up. Doesn't necessarily, because some people will just come and say, "Oh, this is a React position. Why are you asking me Python question?" For example, but there will be people who will be keen to solve everything, and that's kind of people I'm looking for. That you give them a problem, you throw a problem at them, and that without thinking that this is not in my remit, they'll still try and solve it.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Yeah, the people who tell you that I only work in this technology are not the people that you want on your team. They will not carry you forward. Especially, again, if you're in a big company, you can get away with that kind of attitude. But in the small companies and startups, you cannot. You need to be willing to go outside of what you know. Definitely.
So yeah, my next question is what emerging technologies do you think will impact your industry in the next 4 to 5 years?
My industry particularly, I would say the two biggest things. Well, I think everyone's seeing the impacts of generative AI and LLMs and everything that's happening there that just enables, unlocks so much potential and increases productivity massively. I think from a development side of things. So just being able to produce more features, more software, more quickly. I think that it's probably a general statement. I would say it wouldn't necessarily apply to IoT, but it does provide value as well in when you're looking at IoT type data sets, using ML and using these tools for getting way deeper insights into what's happening in a building, in a space, based on the data that you're aggregating. That kind of stuff. I'm seeing a big potential for some, not necessarily analytics or data discovery that wouldn't have already been possible 5-10 years ago using a lot of machine learning technology, but just the speed with which and the accessibility with a lot of these algorithms are there is going to make a difference, and going to, I think, help customers who are collecting a lot of data about their buildings get a lot more value from that data. And then more specifically as it relates to IoT, I would say the other big thing for emerging technologies has got to be the satellite constellations, the Starlink, and then the other one from Amazon, I forgot what it's called now, but those guys, especially Starlink, providing connectivity and the ease with which they're providing connectivity is going to have a huge impact, I think, on IoT. Remote sites, and even now one of the local airlines here in Canada, WestJet, has announced that they have a partnership with Starlink, and they're going to be offering internet, globally anywhere their aircraft are flying, which for me, like, the technological feat of that is just a bit of a tangent, but the technological feat of that is absolutely mind-blowing. But you have that kind of connectivity on an aircraft. Well, now what else can you do on an aircraft, right? You can have all kinds of sensors sending data back to the head office of the airline about all the aircraft, constant, huge data flow. So yeah, I see Starlink and others in that space, being big game changers. And some of the stuff I talked about around why we picked LoRaWAN and data backhaul, and that might be really impacted if backhauling data is ubiquitous and accessible, and anywhere you go you can do it. So yeah, for me, those are really the two big things I see from a technology perspective.
Yeah, I think for any product that's collecting loads of data, I think you can definitely train a language model and sort of create a chatbot like ChatGPT that's sort of focused on your customers and give them more features in terms of, I don't know, they can ask questions like, what does my carbon footprint look like in the next 5 years, for example, based on the data I've collected. And that's just a small example. I'm sure you've got more examples in your mind, but yeah, I can definitely see AI playing a big part in any industry in the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. That's been a really interesting chat. My final question to you is, if someone wants to become a technology leader, CTO in specific, what kind of tips would you give them they need to sort of keep in mind before they become a tech leader?
Yeah, I guess a few things come to mind. One is you need to make sure that you have good foundations of technical knowledge, because if you try to go too early and you try to lead too early, you do run the risk of sometimes losing the respect of your team. So it's not to say that people who are the head of the tech team must know everything about everything and know. You obviously would trust and depend on your team to solve problems and understand things maybe you don't, but you need to be at a level where you would earn the respect of those team members, that they feel they can talk to you about technical problems, and you can participate meaningfully and give them some guidance or support, or be a sounding board. And yeah, if you don't have their respect, then those conversations will never happen, and you really won't be a very useful leader. The other thing I would say, particularly as it relates to this industry, is that, it's definitely a known thing that people who are highly technical are often quite introverted. It's not always the case, but often is the case. And, if you're one of those people who does feel that you're introverted, but you really do want that opportunity to lead, I think it's somewhere where you need to be putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. So, be going into networking events or signing up to do public speaking at tech conferences or your local tech programming groups and places where you can, get exposed and feel a little bit uncomfortable. It will serve you well over the long run. So, I think that because at the end of the day, what you're doing in a CTO or a technical leadership role is, again, you're leading technical people, but you're also engaging with business and being able to work with both camps in a productive way and provide value on both sides of the fence is really where you need to be. And so, the steps that you need to take to get to that place, maybe for some people they're already there. They have a lot of those necessary skills, and maybe they just need some time and experience in the business world and the tech world, and others may need to work a little harder to generate some of those skills for themselves. So, but for me, those are really some of the big things I would encourage people who are thinking about this, and leadership development as well. Being part of a startup that focuses on leadership development, which is, again, this is not necessarily related to being a CTO or technical leader in any way, but just being able to lead people is something that people can really invest in and work in. So yeah, shout out to Monarch, because they're the company that I work with, and they have a great online tool. You can do self-led leadership growth, and it's a place where, and actually in there they even have an AI tool where you can practice and you can role play, so you can put yourself in a situation within a report and actually have a conversation with them and practice having hard conversations. So those kinds of stuff, if you can find tools like that, are really good at your disposal to push you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with your point about having that foundational knowledge, because in my current leadership role and my previous leadership role, my background as a developer really helped me to work with the developers, and if need be, sit down with them, open a whiteboard and solve a problem. But whereas I see some people in the business, their title is tech delivery lead, but they don't even know how to use Jira, for example. They're like, I'm not technical enough to use Jira or any sort of project management software. And I was like, you call yourself a tech delivery lead. You should, when you associate yourself with the word technology, people assume that you are technical.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really, really interesting point, that you need to have a technical foundation to be able to be a technology leader.
Yeah, no, I think it actually is even more so important today as it was, 5 or 10 years ago, because now if you look at the people that are coming out of post-secondary institutions and the level that they are at, when you see them working with technology, they've basically done their entire education up from, would have been elementary school years, having technology being a huge piece of what they do while they learn. So when they come out into industry, they are very well armed with really, really good skills. So if you don't meet that minimum level of some kind of technical competence, I mean, for a CTO, that's not nearly good enough. But for just anyone in business nowadays, you need to have a base level competency for sure.
Yeah, and I'm saying that even for engineering manager roles, like I think back in the day when I first started as a developer, the interviews were like a 15-minute interview and then 1 hour interview, and that's it. But nowadays there are like 4 or 5 rounds in any companies, starting from the chat with the recruiter, and then we have a system design round, you have a coding round, you have a leadership round and you have a cultural fit round and stuff like that. So it's become quite a common practice that people are taking their time to get the right people, which is good in a sense, that you're not wasting anyone's time, because if someone doesn't want to go through all that, then they can just say, I don't want to go through all that. But if someone genuinely wants to join the company, they'll do anything they can to join.
Yeah, for sure. I think there was a period there from around COVID when there was a massive shortage of technical people and people, and the vetting was not at all to what, at least what I saw around me was the vetting was not like that at all. It was much more loose, and people were just, companies were happy just to get their hands on technical people to do work, and that trend is definitely reversed now. And it's you need to be prepared and go through a lot of work to shine over others. It's kind of back to more traditional way of how it used to be.
Cool. Thanks for joining us today. We really had fun talking to you about your life as a CTO and learning more about your really interesting product.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
And I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be part of it.
Cool. Hope you have a good day.
You too. Thanks.